The lead of a screw is the distance that the screw advances in a straight line when the screw is turned one complete turn. So every time that you turn a screw one complete revolution, then the screw advances down into the wood, a distance called the lead. If a screw is 3.5 inches tall, or long, it should says. So here's my screw, it's 3.5 inches from the top to the bottom. And has a lead of 1/8 of an inch. So the lead is 1/8. So that means every time you turn the head of this screw, it's going to go into the wood 1/8 of an inch. How many complete turns would get it all the way into the wood? Let's say that x is the number of turns. Then if we take the number of turns, which we're saying is x, and multiply it by the distance that this screw travels with each turn, that's 1/8. We continue to do this until we get the entire screw into the wood, which is going to be 3.5. So we have x times 1/8. So if you turn it one time, it's going to go 1/8. If you turn it 2 times, it's going to go 2/8. 3 times, 3/8. How many 8s can you fit into 3.5 is what it's really asking. 1/8 as a decimal, if that's easier for you, is 0.125x. 3.5 as a decimal is 3.5. If you divide both sides by 0.125 to get x by itself, you get x is 28. It would take 28 complete revolutions to put this screw into the wood. Number 2, if x times y is 144, and x plus y is 30, and x is bigger than y, what is the value of x minus y? Let's focus on the first two parts. X times y is 144, and x plus y is 30. That is a system of equations. We have two variables, and we have two equations. If you take one of the equations and get x or y by itself, such as the one on the right, x equals 30 minus x, and then replace the y in this first equation with 30 minus x, this is called solving by substitution. If you distribute the x using the distributive property, you get 30x squared, you get 30x minus x squared equals 144. To solve this for x, you need to get all the terms on the same side of the equation. If we subtract 30x and add x squared to both sides, we get 0 equals x squared minus 30x plus 144. This factors. We need two numbers that multiply to get 144, same two numbers add to get negative 30. Those numbers are negative 6 and negative 24. If you add those, you get negative 30. If you multiply them, you get positive 144. If you set each of those factors equal to 0, you're going to end up with x equals 6 or x equals 24. So x is one of those. Not sure which at this point. If we take those numbers and plug them back into this equation here, let's say that x is 6. It'd be 6 plus y is 30. That would make y 24. So in one case, we're saying x is 6 and y is 24. That could not be the answer. The reason that cannot be the answer, because it says up yonder, x is bigger than y. X is 6, y is 24. It's not true. So if we take and put the 24 that we found down here and replace x from this equation here, we get 24 plus y is 30, which makes y 6. So here we're saying x is 24 and y is 6. That works because that makes x bigger than y. The final question to this problem, after doing all this hideous work, find the value of x minus y. 24 minus 6 is 18. Question 3, which of the following is the cosine of angle A in the right triangle below? Quick review. Sine of an angle, such as A, is the opposite leg over the hypotenuse. Cosine of angle A is the adjacent leg over the hypotenuse. Tangent of A is the opposite leg over the adjacent leg. This problem asks for cosine of angle A. So we're looking at this here. Starting at angle A, the opposite leg would be 4. This is the opposite leg. The adjacent leg is the leg that touches angle A. So this is the adjacent. And the hypotenuse is always opposite 90. This is the hypotenuse. So this says cosine of angle A is the adjacent leg, which is 3, over the hypotenuse, which is 5. So cosine of angle A is 3/5. Jana's Jam advertised this daily lunch special. Choose one item from each column for only $1,444,444.95! Exclamation point. Thus, each daily lunch special consists of soup, a salad, a sandwich, and a drink. And then the question, how many different daily lunch specials are there? This is real simple if you know how to do it. We have 5 combinations for salads. We have 2 combinations for soups. We have 3 combinations for sandwiches, and we have 4 combinations for drinks. I think this is called the fundamental counting principle of probability. Could be wrong. Seldom am I, though. If you multiply those together, using a calculator, you get 120 combinations. I'm just kidding, I am often wrong. The volume V of a right cylinder cone with a radius r and a height h, shown below, right here, can be found using this formula. V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. A cone-shaped paper cup has a volume of 150 cubic centimeters and a height of 9.2 centimeters. What is the radius to the nearest centimeter of the paper cup? Let's write down the formula. Couple things here. Tells us the volume, 150 cubic centimeters. Tells us the radius. No, it doesn't, so we're trying to figure out. Tells us the height is 9.2 centimeters. It says also, this is very important, to the nearest centimeter. It means we're rounding. So if we're going to round, well, let's round. Pi is about 3, 3.14. About 3 times 1/3 is about 1. So we could just say this is 1 times r squared times 9.2. If you divide both sides by 9.2, trying to get r by itself, you get about 16.3 is r squared. And if you square root both sides, you get plus or minus about 4. This is a radius, so it's going to be plus. So this radius is about 4. A boat departs from Joe Mama, traveling to Joe Papa. If Jai Papa, that should say Joe. If Joe Papa is located 5 miles east and 7 miles north of the boat's departure point, how many miles is Joe Papa from Joe Mama? So here's Joe Mama. And I spelled mama differently than it has in the problem. I apologize because it's a made-up word. From the starting point, we go 5 miles east. We'll assume that's horizontal to the right. 7 miles north, we'll assume that that is vertical 7. What we cannot assume, and we know for sure, that makes a 90-degree angle. So up here is Papa. The question is, how many miles from Joe Mama to Joe Papa? Pythagorean Theorem is what this problem is using. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 5, b is 7, c, we don't know. 5 squared is 25, 7 squared is 49. If you sum those, you get 74. Square root both sides, you get plus or minus 8.6. It's a distance. Distance is always positive unless you're time traveling. In the figure below, angle ABC is congruent to angle DFE. What that means is they have the same measure. So one arc in each of those means they're congruent. Measure of angle BAC. No, I did that wrong. Hold on a second. ABC and DFE, these two are congruent. And then it says BAC, which I'm going to put two little marks on that one, is congruent to DFE. No, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Let me start over. Let me draw this picture bigger. It's too tiny for me. It's just too tiny. Try to make this more clear now that I've got you completely lost. It's my goal. Take you out in the middle of the woods, say I'm going to help you, run back to the car to pick up the marshmallows, and then just never come back. That's what I do. Start from the beginning. In the figure below, angle ABC. ABC, that's this angle right here, is congruent to angle DFE. DFE, it's this angle right here, congruent. Angle BAC, BAC, it's this angle right here, put two arcs on that, is congruent to angle FDE. FDE. So that's this angle here. That makes sense? Points D and F are on segment AB, obviously. Segment AD here is congruent to segment FB, that's here. So this segment is congruent to this segment. Put one dash on both of those. And distances in centimeters are as shown. So 6 centimeters, 12 centimeters, 20 centimeters. What is the length of segment AD? So what is this? We got lots of work to figure this out. We're supposed to find the length of AD. What we have here, if you look at angle C is congruent to itself. So we end up with two triangles. We've had two triangles all along. We end up with two similar triangles. Here's triangle ABC. Just going to draw it without all the things inside of it. And then here's triangle DFE. Notice how when I drew these, I put the corresponding parts in the same positions. That was intentional. So I'm going to call this part over here and call that X. Since these are similar triangles, we could say 6 is to 12 as X is to 20. 6 is to 12 as X is to 20. 6 divided by 12 reduces to 1/2. To get X by itself, we multiply both sides by 20. 20 times 1/2 is 10. X over 20 times 20 is X. We get that X is 10, which is not the question. It tells us from here to here is 10. The question asks to find the length of AD. Well, if this whole thing is 10, part of it's 6, it means there's 4 left. Since these are both equal, if you divide 4 equally amongst two things, that means that we have a 2 and a 2. Therefore, AD equals 2. This next one, keep in mind ACT is multiple choice. I'm not giving you choices. So it says which of the following is a factor. I don't have choices, so let's just factor this. This is a trinomial. That means that there's 3 terms. Since the lead coefficient here, which is a 2, since it's not a 1, the proper way to do this is to split the middle term and factor by grouping. This middle term is currently minus 3x. We want to split that into 2 separate terms, plus something times x plus something times x. To determine how to split it, we multiply 2 times negative 5, that's negative 10. We need two numbers that multiply to give that. And those same two numbers add to get the coefficient of x, which in this case is -3. We could use a -5 and a +2. That multiplies to get -10 and adds to get -3. On one of these blanks, we put a -5, the other one we put a +2. Doesn't matter which is which. Then you factor by grouping. You group terms together that have common factors, making sure you have a plus between your parentheses. And the GCF of each group. The first group has a GCF of x, leaving us with 2x minus 5. Second group has a GCF of 1, leaving us with 2x minus 5. Looking at these two terms have a GCF of 2x minus 5. So we can pull that out to the front. What remains is an x plus 1. So that is factored. Since this is multiple choice, you're either going to pick this one or this one, whichever one was one of the choices. What is x, the second term in the geometric series of 4th plus x plus 1/32, 36 plus 1/08? Note, in a geometric series, the ratio of any term to the following is a constant. What that means is, if you look at two consecutive terms, the numerator, to get from one to the next, you're multiplying by 1, because it's 1 the whole time. If we multiply 36 times 4, that's going to give us 108. So I'm assuming that's going to go 1/4 plus multiply the bottom times 4 to get the next one, multiply the top times 1 to get the next one. That's why all my tops are 1s. If I'm multiplying by 4, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 not 36. Not 36 at all, so my assumption was wrong because I'm virtually a moron. 36 times 3 is 108. So I'm multiplying by 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Wow, I just butchered this to pieces. 12 times 3 is 36. 36 times 3 is 108. So to get from one term to the next each time, we're multiplying by 1/3. Top times 1 and the bottom times 3. The question is, what is x? X is 1/12. I apologize for the error. What is the slope of any line parallel to the line 9x plus 4y equals 7? Well, if you get this equation into slope-intercept form, which I hope you know what that means, then the coefficient of x is going to be the slope. Lines that are parallel to each other have the same slope. So any line that has parallel slope is going to have a slope of -9/4. A DVD player with a list price of $150 is marked down 30%. What that means is you're saving 30%. I like to focus on what I'm spending. If I'm saving 30%, that means I'm spending 70%. As a decimal, that's 0.7. Multiplying 150 times 0.7 is $105. Since it's on sale, I'm now paying $105. John, who's quite the employee, gets a discount of 20%. Normally an employee gets 10%, but John is so good at his job, he gets 20. So he saves an additional 20%, which means he's going to be paying, wait for it, 80%. So he pays 80% of 105, which is $84. How much does John pay for the DVD player? $84. Number 12. You're supposed to simplify this. A -25 squared is going to be a positive number. A negative times a negative is a positive. 25 squared is 625. We could break -625 into the square root of a -1 times the square root of 625. A -1 square root, as noted, is I. It's an imaginary number. The square root of 625, using a calculator, is 25. So this answer is 25i, where I is an imaginary answer.